Julie. Bob is right here. No, the technical right there.
No, you're.
Good evening, everybody. I have the pleasure to announce Julie Anderson, and she gave me a written bio and gave me permission to ad-lib some, so this is going to be interesting. Okay, Julie Anderson is an international public speaker, communication coach, brain personality connection expert, and a published author. Over the past more than 15 years, she has been speaking on topics relating to improving in all areas of your life by understanding the brain-personality connection. And she's also a great networker, friend, and welcome to Julie Anderson.
Told her she kept it clean. Okay, first off, can I have a show of hands of anybody who could use a little extra brain power tonight? A little extra? Okay, wait a minute. Oops, I only have 4 extra brains. Here you go. Here's a little extra brain power. Little extra brain power. Okay. As silly as it seems, this is like your bonus brain tip, because this isn't one of the 5. If you are sitting and you have a block when you're on, or you're in the office and you're sitting and you have a block, or you're trying to be creative and you just can't get past something, grab something. Grab a ball, toss it around. The brain loves movement. Little stress balls are great, especially if you're a kinesthetic learner. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But that's like your bonus tip at the beginning instead of at the end, okay? So we're going to talk about the 5 quick brain tips. And this really has to do everything with your brain person. Wait a minute. It's beeping at me. Okay, what do we do with brain, with technical difficulties? Everything that we do has to do with our brain-personality connection. And our brain-personality connection has to do with all of our relationships. And to improve those relationships, oh, it's backwards, never mind. Maybe I was doing it wrong. Okay, has to do with improving, if we understand our brain-personality connection more, we can improve every relationship that we have. So that's what these 5 tips are going to help each one of you to do if you apply them in your life. The first brain tip, and there is a handout going around, the first brain tip is honor the introvert. There's this little portion in the brain called the RAS. How many of you have heard of that? Can somebody tell me what it is?
Reticular activation
Reticular
system.
activating system. It is like the volume control on the brain. And some of us, we have the volume set really high, right? We can take a lot of external stimulus. Introverts cannot. Their volume's low, and so they want less stimulus. So what can happen is if you're in a networking environment, or maybe you're just trying to communicate with somebody, their body language is going to tell you that their reticular activating system has kicked into gear and is causing you to concern and withdraw. So watch their body language. Are they dropping their shoulders in as if to protect their body? Are they stepping backwards to get out of a high stimulus environment? Are they turning their body to the side because their brain has told them, I need an escape route. Give me an escape route, right? Are they fiddling with their hands? Or have they lost eye contact with you? If so, you're overwhelming them. Step back, make an appointment to meet with them at another time at a quiet place or discuss the issue when their brain is a little bit more comfortable. Okay? Brain tip number 2. This has to do with matching the CS. Who can tell me what the CS is? Communication style. Anybody? Communication style. All right. Also known as sensory preference. I gave you guys a cheat sheet. This does stand for communication style. Auditories, visuals, or kinesthetics. Now what we tend to do as individuals is we communicate on the style that we have. So if I'm an auditory, I'm most likely going to communicate through words, right? But what we need to do is we need to match the person we're trying to communicate with. That's really important. So if you hear somebody say something like, what's your point of view? Or, I see what you mean. What do you think their communication style might be? Visual. They're using terms that are visual. So you have to draw it out for them. Literally take a piece of paper and draw it for them, or in your language use visual terms. If you hear things like, that sounds good to me, I hear what you're saying, what do you think they are? Auditory, right? So you use auditory words, you describe things to them, you write it down in full sentences, give them directions based on full sentences, and their brain will get it better. If you hear the terms like, it touched me when you said this, or what is your feelings on this? What's their communication style? Kinesthetic. They're gut feelers. So you have to hit their gut. You have to communicate with that particular communication style. So that's tip number 2. Tip number 3, keep sex in mind. Okay, wait a minute, get your minds on the camera, right? Even though sex is good because it has endorphins and it's healthy for the brain and body, what we're talking about is the structural difference between the male brain and the female brain. It is different in 12 main areas, and it is chemically different based on the hormones that we produce. Now I do a whole 4-hour workshop on this, right? But one of the things that hits people the most has to do with a little area of the brain called the corpus callosum. This is the neural fibers that connect the right and left side of the brain. In women, they are larger in diameter, and we have just a larger mass there. So we have like major Los Angeles freeway interchange going on, okay? We got so many cars going on and off this freeway all the time that these cars are thoughts, and we're constantly busy. Men, not so much. Men are single thought focused. They have more like a quiet 2-lane country road. And sometimes on that 2-lane country road, there's a 1-lane bridge. And ladies, if we're trying to put all of our thoughts, all of our cars on their 2-lane road, what's going to happen? There's going to be a traffic jam. So the best thing to do is wait until they're done with their existing thought, and then get their attention. Tell them, when you have a moment, I have something cool I want to tell you. Once you do that, they're going, okay, she needs my attention. Let me finish what I'm doing. So that's quick brain tip number 3. Brain tip number 4 is consider their DBQ. What's the DBQ? Dominant brain quadrant. This is relatively new information that has come out of the field of science. It is an area, the brain is made up of many different lobes. But what we're talking about is the 4 main quadrants. 2 posterior, 2 anterior, and then your right and left, or your 2 on the right and 2 on the left. Current research shows that most people have a decreased resistance across the synaptic gap to communicate or to work in one of those 4 quadrants. Literally, they spend up to 1/100th the amount of energy to do this. So you need to consider that in the other person. The frontal left can be considered the CEO brain type. Okay, this is where the CEO type activities take place. Then you have your data time trackers, which is your basal left. Your frontal right is your big visionary, big picture person. And then you have your warm fuzzies, and they're what I call the basal rights. So you can imagine you need to educate yourself on these different types of brain quadrant dominances, because if I'm a warm fuzzy and I'm over here trying to talk to a CEO brain, and I'm talking to you all about the emotion and how wonderful and harmonious all this is going to be, yeah, exactly. You're just going to kick it all out, right? Because he wants the facts, only the facts, logical, inductive, deductive reasoning, right? If I am the big, open-minded, visionary thinker, and I'm talking to you that's the data and time tracker, you want the details. I'm not giving you any details. I'm just giving you the big picture. He's not going to get the message I'm trying to send. So it's really important that we consider who we're talking to and what is their brain-personality connection. Equally important is to understand how it's going to affect your personal health. See, if we're constantly living outside of our innate brain lead, then we're spending 100 times as much energy, second for second, to work there. So we're exhausted, we're frustrated, and it can literally lead to poor health. So we want to keep our brain energy tank full, so we need to be aware of this, which leads me to tip number 5. 20 years ago started me on this wonderful trip into the brain, and that's when I was studying psychoneuroimmunology. So tip number 5 is be mindful of your state of mind. There's a direct connection between the immune system and the emotion system in the brain. They are both, it's all processed in the same area. So if my emotions are low, then my health is low. There's a definite connection between health and happiness. So, Bianca Brain here says think positive thoughts for positive health. You do this by reading positive quotes as often as possible. You try to always keep in mind or recall positive experiences in your life. When the brain is scanned, the brain doesn't know the difference between you actually experiencing that moment or you recalling having experienced that moment. So it's a powerful way to lift your spirits and literally create endorphins in your brain. Also, always look for the silver lining. With the exception of a few very traumatic experiences, there's always a silver lining that we can find, right? So focus on that. And if you do that, you will be happier and healthier. So you can see, if you take these 5 brain tips, you put them into your life, you use them, you acknowledge everyone's brain quadrant dominance, and you pay attention to their communication style, your relationships are going to improve, your brain is going to be happy, and you'll actually be using your brain. So my name is Julie Anderson. My company is Your Best Mind. I like to tell people I run a brain search and rescue program. So when you all feel like you've lost it, give me a call.
All right, so we had group number 2. You guys are all over it, already making some notes over there. Perfect. While they were doing that, the rest of us, I'm going to go ahead and give Julie some productive feedback. So thoughts on the talk, the structure, the content, what I liked about the first